Everywhere in space, there's a pulsation. The ancient Vedas say that whom you call your creator is a pulse. And the name of that pulse is spanda. So according to the yogis who spent decades and decades in silence, everything in the universe is pulsing. And that pulsation pulses with consciousness. So imagine how revolutionary this was like 5,000 years ago, that your Lord is a pulse and she pulses with consciousness. So the question comes up, if the Almighty is a pulse, then what's the difference between the Almighty and your personal soul? You know, there's the Lord, there's God in your soul. What's the difference? According to yoga, there's no difference. They're made of the same pulsation, but the way the Shiva Sutras describe it, Shiva Sutra is made up of 77 verses, and it comes from a branch of yoga called Kashmir Shaivism. Kashmir Shaivism is the more modern branch of yoga. The original branch of yoga was dead set on the opinion that everything in this world is unreal. So the earth, the automobile, cosmetics, everything is unreal. Only the inner world of meditation is real. But when they modernized yoga, the second branch of yoga named Kashmir Shaivism came about, and it's very, very close to quantum physics. All of Kashmir Shaivism is focused on energy, and that the God that created this world is also an energy, and that the pulsation of that energy is made of consciousness. So following the Shiva Sutra, they say that there's a big chakra in the world, the Mahabindu, and from that big opening, like a black hole, the pulsation of the Lord rains down on people. And the way it rains down is that the light of the Lord is just pure consciousness and light, but as it starts to vibrate, it makes the sound Om. And this Om originally descends from the Mahabindu, from this great chakra, and as it comes out of the chakra, is the pure sound of Om. However, as it travels millions of miles, the sound of Om is modified. It goes into modifications. So by the time the Om rains down on you, you're getting a modified version of the voice of God. So imagine this one big chakra up in the sky. Through it, you get the vibrational sound of Om raining down on each one of us. There's 19 of us here. Each one of us gets a modification of Om raining down on our mind. And that modification then starts to constitute our soul. So if you ask the question, what's the difference between an old soul and a new soul? The old soul that had a lot of wisdom even at the age of 3 is the body that receives a very purified version of the light and of the Om. But in essence, because what's raining down on you is still the essence of God, then your soul is really no different than the essence itself. It's like, rain falls on your head from 1,000 miles away, it's still H2O. So the essence of H2O is still there. It just might be polluted. By the time it comes through the Los Angeles sky, the rain gets polluted. So what drips on your head is a polluted version of H2O. This is why in all of yoga, they say that once you master your soul, you have yet another stage to go through. The next stage is you go from your soul, which is a diluted version of the holy light. You must surpass that and go up to Brahman. So Jiva is the name of your personal soul. Brahman is the unpolluted light and the essence of Om. The Lord has several states, and I'll describe the various states of the Lord from the purest to the least pure. According to the Vedas, the purest form of God is the God force resting in absolute silence, no movement, no sound. It's just eternal bliss called Ananda. Ananda simply means the God force, which is a subatomic pulsation, is just resting like an ocean of peace. And within that ocean of peace, there is just God celebrating the glory of God. There's no movement, just an ocean of bliss. Now, if you draw parallels between your own spiritual growth and the Lord, you see, when you come to samadhi or nirvana, you arrive at a point of total rest. In other words, your brain wave activity is almost zero. Heartbeat is way, way down. Respiration is almost zero. At that point, you experience Ananda, which is absolute rest with almighty powers while you're resting. The second stage or state of God is called Shiva. Shiva means that the Lord then recognizes her own infinite potential. So she still hasn't started manifesting. She simply takes a look at herself and realizes that she has infinite, untapped potential. Again, drawing a parallel to humans, 2 days before Jimi Hendrix died, he's on video saying, "I just know that there's a lot more music in me that hasn't come out yet." So it's funny comparing the Lord to Jimi Hendrix, but the humans, being images of the Lord, go through the same states. If you watch Hendrix play the lead guitar, he is in nirvana. He's in Ananda. He's in absolute bliss. The only times when he had lots of bliss was when he was playing the guitar. So now we have the absolute rest of the Lord, Ananda. We have the potential, the untapped potential of God, Shiva. Then once God recognizes her own power, she kind of clenches a fist to create the willpower of God. The willpower of God is called Icha in scriptures. It means the first time God decides to manifest physical matter. So the matter hasn't been manifested yet. She's just made up her mind to create. And then in one of the scriptures, a student, a seeker, asks a sage, why would the Lord even want to create? I mean, what does the city of Santa Barbara mean to the Lord who can create anything? And the answer that comes out of the Shiva Sutras is, I am alone, therefore I want to become the many. The answer is, well, what would you do? If you were a force that had infinite potential, you could create anything you wanted from inside out, and there was no limitation. Would you just tumble in space and Om, or would you create the bougainvillea? And what do you call this flower? Say it out loud.
Birds of paradise.
Birds of paradise. So the Lord is not going to stop creating flowers. What would you do? If you had infinite potential, what would you do? You would just spill over. And so now we have the restful state of God, Ananda, pure bliss, Shiva, her recognizing her own potential, and then Icha. She decides to get to work and create something. You'll see all these parallels in your own lives, by the way. We'll come back to your lives. And then after Icha, there's Shakti. Shakti means the first perceptible movement of God. like a storm or a hurricane, is the movement of the God force. A baby being born is the movement of the God force. What's interesting is the further away you get from the absolute rest, the more you lose power. So the Shiva Sutras, the Spandakarikas, these ancient scriptures say that the Lord herself loses power as she goes from absolute, invisible restfulness into the world of physical matter. So as the Lord moves from Ananda to Shiva to Icha to Shakti, she's losing power. We can describe this in terms of physics. In physics, we say that all physical matter is made of atoms, and underneath the atom, there's a light, which, by the way, melted down Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So that light is very, very powerful. Depends on how you use it. So what the scriptures say is that the physical creation is less energetic than the subatomic light that creates it. This is why if you split an atom, you can melt down Santa Barbara. So when you go to the invisible world, that's when the power becomes humongous. In deep meditation, you folks touch the invisible world. When you're out of meditation, your name is just Tom. So in Tom form, you have a lot less power. But if you transcend your mind and slip into deep meditation, and if you just rub elbows with the Lord in the deep meditation, you will suddenly be filled with humongous power. So Paramahansa Yogananda said, one cell has enough atoms and subatomic power to light up the whole city of Chicago. What he was really referring to was subatomic power. You have access to subatomic power in deep meditation. That field is called pure consciousness. In the gap between two thoughts, you slip into this quietude. That quietude is filled with ananda or bliss, because it has to do with the restfulness of the God force. The Lord, by the way, swings on a pendulum between two major states. When she's invisible, unmoving, and silent, that stage is called unmessa. So what I'm saying is, anything beyond physical matter, which is invisible, weightless, and unseen, belongs to the unmanifest world of unmessa. That same force, when she manifests, she comes into nimesa. Nimesa simply means mind turns into matter. And according to yoga, as soon as your mind turns into matter, you lose energy. Why? Because a solid object doesn't have the same energy as the atoms that put it together. Think of it this way. What's the difference between a block of ice, H2O, water, the liquid, and cloud? The difference is that the cloud has a higher molecular motion than a block of ice. Therefore, the block of ice, being more solid, is less energetic than vapor or cloud. Any scientist will tell you that the molecules in a patch of cloud are moving faster than the molecules in a block of ice. Okay? When you start accessing pure consciousness, your life will be perfectly organized. As you get used to diving into that gap between two thoughts, your mind will become more still. As you start to experience more stillness, your life will become more organized. Like you have an appointment on the other side of Los Angeles. Somehow you turn on the ignition at a particular moment without even looking at your watch. Somehow when you arrive, in Pacific Palisades, you see that you are exactly on time. You find that your closet is becoming neater. You realize that your diet is becoming cleaner. You realize that your love life is becoming cleaner. There's no messy stuff. You realize that you're telling no more white lies. All of your life becomes more clean. I don't mean clean cut, I mean organized, uncomplicated, and simple, while you're succeeding. The field of pure consciousness creates success from inside out. This is why what you should do, you wake up in the morning, you do your meditation, you slip into that gap or the pause between two breaths, you gather your strength, and then you come off your meditation cushion, you go to your job. When you go to your job after meditation, it's almost impossible to make a huge mistake, because your mind is bathing in pure consciousness. Spanda, which is the pulsation of the Lord's consciousness, is the source of all powers. So the scriptures say that all other powers, like thunder, earthquake, wealth, the military genius of Napoleon Bonaparte, all these powers actually arise from the pure power of the pulsation of the Lord. This is why a senior guru who has touched bases with the pulse of consciousness has access to the source of power. At the source of power, you have access to all of the other subordinate powers. So wealth is nothing compared to spanda. Cancer is nothing compared to the pulsation of consciousness.